Hi, today we are going to talk about evolution and creation. Believing in evolution or creation both require faith. There is no scientific experiment that can prove evolution or creation to be true. So both beliefs are based on faith according to what we see around us. You either believe in some sort of eternal matter or energy, or you believe in the eternal creator God, who we know as our Father. Everyone believes by faith in something or someone. Faith is simply believing and trusting in something that you cannot see. So let's bring this case to court. Either we believe that humans, animals, and all of the highly complex and detailed creation that we see around us came about merely by chance and are the result of the evolution of things changing from one thing into another thing over millions or billions of years, and that everything we see just appeared by chance, mindlessly, and by accident. Or we choose to believe that there was a creator who intricately designed and created each thing with its own purpose and according to its kind, as the Bible tells us. God, or Yahweh, the Father of all things, is an amazing artist, designer, engineer, and creator of everything that we see in the heavens and on the earth. Genesis 1:1 tells us that God created the heavens and the earth. God says, I am the Lord who made everything, who alone stretched out the sky, who fashioned the earth all by myself. So we either believe in him or we do not. Romans 1 tells us that we can know that there is a creator by what we see in his creation. Genesis tells us that God created all the living creatures in the sea and on the land according to their kind. The phrase according to their kind is important. God created all of these living creatures in the sea and on the land according to their kind, and he told them to be fruitful and multiply. He did not create a populated earth. He created just enough of each kind so that they could be fruitful and multiply. And then he gave each kind similar DNA with enough variance that over time, as they reproduced, they could make many different sea and land creatures, but still each according to their kind. So let's take a look at a few of these creatures and see if we think they came about by chance and evolved over millions of years, or if they appear to have been individually created as the Bible tells us. So let's start by looking at the giraffe. If to look at the giraffe's head, it should explode when it bends down to get a drink of water. But instead, there's an amazing process that keeps a giraffe from blowing its brains out. When a giraffe bends its head down, its huge heart, 24 pounds and up to 2 feet wide, starts pumping with gravity, which creates a blast of blood to the head with the power to blow the arteries of the brain out. However, this never happens because of a specialized system of valves in the giraffe's neck that close behind that last pump of blood, keeping the next pump of blood from pushing with gravity and exploding the tiny capillaries in the brain. While the rest of the blood has been held back, there still is one pump of blood heading toward the brain. This pump of blood could also blow the giraffe's brains out, but it doesn't because there is a specially designed sponge of blood vessels underneath the brain where this blood is directed. Then, when the giraffe decides to raise its head back up, if it didn't have a uniquely designed way to get the blood out of the sponge, it would faint and fall over because of lack of oxygen to the brain. This never happens though either because the sponge squeezes the blood into the brain so the giraffe doesn't pass out. Then the valves in the neck artery open back up and work to pump the blood up that long neck to the brain. Was the giraffe created by design? Or did all of these amazing systems happen by chance over millions of years? Another amazing creation is the bombardier beetle that makes explosions that scare off its predators. It has complex muscle and nerve connections and an incredible combustion apparatus. It mixes two chemicals, one organic and the other inorganic, and they are stored in two reservoirs inside the beetle. And when it is needed, they are ejected into an explosion chamber, and then an enzyme is added, which causes multiple discharges or explosions. The steam of 212 degrees Fahrenheit is released through two cannons and can shoot several feet away. The toxic spray of the chemicals is highly irritating and very stinky. These chemicals are precisely combined at the appropriate times and are released at regular intervals, 300 pulses per second. The beetle also controls the pressure and direction of the spray with great accuracy, and this helps to keep the beetle's predators away. All of these parts had to work together right from the start. It would have been very dangerous or useless if this defense came together over time and only by chance. So is it complex design or mindless mutations? The next animal that we'll look at is a duck-billed platypus. It is another unique and complex creature, maybe one of the most unique and most complex creatures that we know here on the earth today. It lays eggs like a reptile, has venom like a reptile, spurs like a chicken, excretes milk from belly patches to nurse its young, has fur that glows, webbed feet like a duck, and it uses its sensor-filled duck-like bill to find aquatic prey like paddlefish do, since it swims with its eyes closed. So the question is, did it evolve from another mammal, from a reptile, a bird, or a fish? Or was it its own kind, created by God? Next, let's consider bees. Their brains are only about the size of a grass seed, but they have the ability to recognize faces, and they make perfectly formed combs with hexagonal cells to maximize space and for heat transfer in the beehive. These cells are very orderly and just right for raising their young and for storing honey. Bees are also used to pollinate many plants and trees. They have long tongues that get nectar from a flower and tiny little hairs and baskets to collect and carry pollen. They also have a very sophisticated dance to tell other bees where good food sources are. They innately know physics and aerodynamics and how to use their legs when flying on a windy day. So did bees learn this over time, or were they created this way? If it was over time, they probably would be extinct because of wrong leg placement in the wind as they would try to learn how to do this, and they would have gotten themselves blown away. And really, how long would it have taken them to all learn this dance that they could communicate with and understand what these proper dance moves were? Bats and dolphins are next. They hear ultrasonic frequencies, and they both use echolocation. The bat's sonar technology is very specific for living in the air and flying around, and the dolphin's is for water. This causes us to wonder if they could have developed randomly in two very different environments, or if God created each one individually in its own habitat. Now let's consider beavers. They can see clearly underwater because they have clear eyelids. They also have specifically designed valve-like ear and nose flaps to keep water out, and flaps of fur that cover their back teeth to keep them warm in the cold water. And their front teeth never stop growing so they can keep chopping down trees. Is this intelligent design or by time and chance? Next, let's look at the woodpecker, who is also incredibly designed. So next time you see a woodpecker outside, watch it, and please remember this. It has 2 toes in the front and 2 in the back so that it can climb up and down trees, right side up or upside down. And it uses its tail to help balance as a tripod. It also is amazing that between each peck, the woodpecker's eyes open up to focus, and then they close under special eyelids that keep its eyes from popping out of its head with the force of each peck. They also don't get concussions because the brain is tightly attached to the inside of the woodpecker's skull. And there is also a shock-absorbing cushion between the beak and the skull to help protect the brain. The tongue is also a great miracle. It has backward barbs on it so that it can grab grubs burrowed into a tree. And it even has a special glue on the tip of its tongue so that if a grub is too wiggly, which interestingly only sticks to its lunch and not to its beak. If we look at butterflies and their wings, they are designed and amazingly engineered. They emulate a new generation of robotic drones that only recently man was able to design. So did the woodpecker and the butterfly randomly form from pond scum? Next, let's consider the hummingbird. It is the smallest warm-blooded creature on the earth and weighs less than a dollar bill when it is born. It has specifically designed rotator cuffs that allows its shoulder to rotate up to 180 degrees, and it can move its wings in a figure-8 pattern. The hummingbird can fly backwards and upside down, and their wings beat from 720 to 5,400 times per minute when hovering. which makes the humming noise. And they can fly up to 200 miles per hour. And this little flying wonder can also shake its head 132 times a second to get the drops of water off it when it is flying in the rain, as well as rotating its head 202 degrees at the same time. So does this appear to be evolution or creation? Next, let's look at geckos. They have incredible feet with very special pads on their toes that can even grip glass. They can run easily across the floor, up the wall, and over the ceiling upside down. Their toe pads not only adhere strongly to most surfaces, but they can peel off those surfaces very quickly. Their pads have tiny hair-like projections that can only be seen through very strong magnification. Special kinds of thin oils are also manufactured and secreted to keep them clean. Otherwise, they would not work. This water-repellent cleaning fluid also helps to adhere and release their feet as they walk or run. So did the gecko's feet perfect themselves over millions of years, or did God create them on day 6? There are many more examples, but the last one we will look at today is the dog, man's best friend. Their noses are like our fingerprints. Each one is uniquely different. They smell 100,000 times better than humans, and their nose has different chambers leading down each nostril, enabling them to smell separately on each side of their nose, which gives them an added dimension of information. It's kind of like 3D smelling. Dogs also have an incredible ability to combine their two senses, what they see and what they hear, to distinguish human emotions. They can watch and listen and then put together a more complete picture of someone's emotions and how they're feeling. This is a rare ability in an animal. Dogs are some of the only creatures with this unique ability, and they not only sense emotions, but then they have a desire to comfort. The dog's powerful sense of smell can even detect some kinds of cancer in people. So did man's best friend evolve over millions of years, or did God create him on day 6 for mankind to enjoy right away? So let's consider a few more things before we come to our verdict. The way the gecko gets around is either all or nothing. Everything must work together right from the beginning so that their toes would adhere to a surface. They need curved toe pads because if they were flat, their whole foot would stick to the surface and they wouldn't be able to lift their legs. They also need to roll their toes so they can quickly remove and replace their feet as they walk or they run. This movement requires an intelligently designed skeletal structure and an integrated neuromuscular coordination. This couldn't happen over time. Without being incredibly engineered from their beginning, the gecko would have been easy prey and would have been extinct long ago. There's also no way a giraffe could have evolved over time. It needed its neck and its valves to work properly right from the beginning, because if it was waiting for the valves to evolve and to come to this perfection, its head would have exploded along the way and it would have become extinct long ago as well. There also could not have been some partially evolved bombardier beetle because it would have blown itself up when it mixed the chemicals. It also had to be carefully timed and be able to aim those explosions, and this could not have happened by time and chance. The systems are intricately designed and the valves are very complex. If the minute valves did not work properly, the beetle would have burned itself up. And if the beetle released its spray in one blast instead of many, it would have shot itself across the road or across the way, just like a rocket from the earth. There is no evidence of insect evolution, one insect turning into another insect over long periods of time. Beetles have always been beetles. So why is it when we look at creation, so many people refuse to acknowledge that there is a creator and a designer of all of the wonderful things that we see? If we look at man-made things, like an airplane, we acknowledge that there must have been an intelligent designer and an engineer who knew what they were doing and had purposeful intent when they created the plane. If we didn't acknowledge that, we probably wouldn't get on the airplane. And those creating the airplane had to understand the materials that they were using and also how the wind would affect the plane and how it worked. So in the same way, we need to see and acknowledge that there is an intelligent designer when we look at the systems in the human body and all of creation, all of the creatures that we looked at today, and even down to the smallest cells. All of creation required an engineering genius. It required a designer and a creator. It could not have happened just by chance. And when to look at the many man-made inventions that we have and that we use, many of those things came about by people looking at the diverse creation around them, looking at what God had created. But even so, when they create these things, man still has not been able to create something from nothing. And many things they still cannot replicate. For example, there's no man-made adhesive technology that comes even close to functioning as well as the gecko's feet. I think that we can see that these living creatures were clearly designed, which means that there was a designer. There are many animals that have parts that could not have evolved over time or by a gradual addition of traits, because this would have required a version of the animal that had not already existed and had all these traits. And this transitional form would have died and the animal would have never existed, just like the giraffe. So remember, in Romans 1:20, it says that God can be seen and his attributes are known to all men through what he has made, and that they are without excuse. So in looking at these few creatures, does it seem to you that there must have been a creator and a designer? You can look at the tiniest cell to all of creation and reason that they must have been made by an intelligent designer. Or you can believe that nothing produced everything, non-life produced life, randomness produced precision, and chaos produced order. But I ask you, do you have that much faith? Do not ignore God by ignoring your eyes and the reasoning brain that he gave you, because we are without excuse.